All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just gonna give folks a few minutes to get on the bridge here, make sure everything's up and running for you. I'm thrilled to be welcoming Dominic Desmarais as our guest speaker for this month's webinar. As most of you may know, this is our thought leadership-oriented series where every other month we like to bring on somebody who's an expert either in lean construction, construction technology, industry advancement, and just have them share some of their thoughts and expertise on our channel. So we'll give everybody a couple of minutes just to get on the call here. But first, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping notes. First off, this session is being recorded, so we will have that up and available on our channels. Once the webinar wraps, we'll also send out a recap and a link to that recording to everybody who is on. So if you have to hop off or you want to send it out to a colleague, you will be getting that shortly on either later today or early tomorrow. The other thing is we do have our Q&A live at any point throughout the call. If you have any questions for Dom, questions for us, feel free to put those into the chat. We'll either answer them all at the end, or if we get a really good question, we may actually stop and jump in on it as we go through today. So we will have time to get to all your questions at the end of the presentation. And I do want to put a calendar block out for our next webinar, which is going to be in July. We will be featuring guest speaker Robert Zimmerman on July 16th. He's a consultant and host of the Contech Exec podcast. He's got a lot of industry experience. He started in a carpentry business himself. He's moved into project management, and now he's really working with construction companies of all different shapes and sizes and helping them get more adept with their construction technology, their AI footprint. So wealth of knowledge. He's talked to a lot of different tech vendors out there, and we really look forward to having him on the podcast to share some of his expertise. So we're just locking down the remaining details for that, and the link will be live on our events page in the coming weeks. The other thing I wanted to mention is we do have our virtual Lunch and Learn series that has kicked off just in the last couple of months here. This is a great opportunity if you'd actually like to learn more about digital pole planning with Nialli's technology. Today's webinar is really all about thought leadership. We're not really going to get into our software in particular, but if you'd like to learn more about the Nialli software, this is an awesome opportunity to do so. We kind of rotate through the time zones every month, so check out our page if you want to see the next ones we have up on the calendar. We are going to have more up on our website as well shortly. We're just in the process of switching webinar platforms, but this is a great opportunity to tune in over lunch hour. And if you're new to working with us, or it's your first time attending one of these sessions, we will actually send you a voucher through Uber Eats to get your lunch covered. So makes it easy and no, it can be tough to step away from a job site sometimes. So hope you can join us for one of those sessions. And again, it's up on our events page if you don't have a chance to scan the QR code here. And the final thing I did want to mention is that we do have Digital Construction Week coming up just in a couple of weeks here in London, UK. This is with our partner Sente. I'll be at the show. My colleague Rick's going to be there as well. Awesome event if you are in the UK. I would highly recommend checking this one out. All the major construction brands are at it, and it's actually free to come as an attendee for the show. So do check this out. And then later on this year, we're going to have a whole bunch more events coming up in the fall, but obviously it gets a little bit lighter over the summer months. And with that, I just want to make sure my colleague Alan has been able to get back on the call. Actually, I think he may be having some technical difficulties. He is our product director and the moderator for today's discussion. So we'll give him a minute or two just to hop back on the bridge here. But I would like to go ahead and introduce Dominic Desmarais, our guest speaker for today. He's lean construction director at Graham Construction, and he's also doing a lot of research in the area of lean construction. So maybe with that, Dom, I'll let you tell the audience a little bit about your background and why you're so passionate about production scheduling and production planning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to spend time with thought leaders and people who want to make a difference and change how the industry operate. And go Avs for anybody who's in Canada. We've made it to the third round, so it's going to be a great day today. I'm looking forward to tonight, but we got to get through this first. And so welcome everybody. Happy to be here. I'm Dominic. As Laura said, I work for Graham Construction. A bit of my background and how I got to where I'm at today. It's a bit of a roundabout story. I'm a professional engineer. I studied mechanical engineering in my undergrad and specialized in production system design. I spent the first 10 years of my life retrofitting factories and improving how factories work. And it was a great time. That's where I was first exposed to things like lean. And then made my way out west. It's been 20 years now. It was 20 years this month that I'm now an Albertan. And so moved out west and then worked for a modular construction company. Was approached by a company who built work camps for in the Alberta oil sands primarily. And so the ask was how can we use lean to help improve the way that these sort of factory operate. So that's how I got into construction. It was in 2008, and yeah, it was an interesting journey. You always see the charts. People say, well, manufacturing is twice as productive as construction. So I spent 10 years on that upper curve trying to make that 30% better, and then jump back to construction. And I mean, for me, the gap is has been noticeable, or very clear and visible. And so spent 10 years to do some of those things in volumetric modular construction, and then I moved and started working for GC about 10 years ago. And yeah, another little sort of shock on how this works. And yeah, I can't look the other way. I want to help the industry improve, and I think that production science is one way that we can sort of connect all the dots of all this sort of system and idea that exists into something that's comprehensive, that will actually make a difference on how we deliver projects. So that's journey in a nutshell. And yeah, it's and then I'm here today, and happy to work. Thank Alan finally made his way back, so good to have you here.
The internet gods were not smiling at a perfect time, 1 minute to 9. That's just great. So apologies for that. Thanks for the introduction, Dominic. Nice to have you here. Why don't we start with the words production control system? It actually sounds like it came from a factory. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that means, just to set the ground for our discussions?
Yeah, the word production is somewhat foreign to construction. I don't really know why, but it's yeah, it's a word that you don't really see around too much. I recently bought the most recent PMBOK. I have the 2 and 3 versions, and I went in there to try to see how did they talk about production. And still to this day, to the latest edition that was published this year, there is no mention of the word production. They didn't even bother putting a definition for it in the definition section. And I think it's because people got sort of saddled with the idea that that projects are temporary endeavors, and production is a permanent system, and that it lasts for years or forever, right? We tend to see manufacturing as a continuous operation and project as temporary endeavor. And so I think that this very sort of simple fragment got the whole construction industry to disregard most of what comes out of production at the expense of things that are promoted in projects, as an example. But if you look at most of the specialty work that is performed by our trade community, whether it's a mason or drywaller or framer or an electrician, their location where they do their production changes, but their work is relatively similar and
I suppose they're producing something. I mean, I was just curious because I'd never really found a clear definition either. I thought maybe you had. Interesting. So why don't we get into talking about the industry? Currently you hear, well, that's the way we've always done it, or it's worked before. Uh, why is that, like, is that not good enough anymore? Like, what has changed? Or what's the the reason for this push towards, the lean practice, etc.
Well, our performance has been dismal for a long time.
Right.
And I think, I mean, the other thing that's happening is um, projects are getting more and more complicated over time. Like if you
Mm,
think of a building that was built in the 1800s or early 1900s, you had a carpenter and a mason,
mm.
and you could build your structure, and you could your mason did your HVAC system, by um, doing the fireplace in the building,
Making
right?
holes, making
Yeah,
holes in the
making the
wall.
chimney in the fireplace, right? You just needed, 4 or 5 of those, and then you had ventilation, and your steel worker made the little hook on the wall to put the candle, and you had your lighting, right? And so it's a bit of an exaggeration, but building systems were simpler, and there was
Right.
less of them. And as technology develops, as new material develops, as the industrial age came about, and people have come up with new materials, new methods, new systems, you sort of keep layering um, elements, right? And now you need 25 to 30 companies to build a building,
Mm.
10 to 15 consultancy firms that needs to be organized to do the same work. So there's more steps in both design and assembly or construction, um, and those steps are interlocked with steps from other companies and other systems. And I think that this added level of complexity and coordination requires us to look at how that progresses in a bit of a different way than we used to. And to me, this is where the theory of production, the work of Koskela, the transformation flow value theory of production that was thought of for construction start to bring value, because it's not just about transformation. So how do I go input into output? It's how do the output connect with the input of the other person, and how does that connect with the output and the transformation of the other person, and how do we make sure that in every steps we do not impede the work of the person upstream, right? So that, to me, that's
Yeah.
the value part within the system. And then ultimately, how do we make sure that all of the combination of those steps that is performed by all of these individuals end up creating something that the customer wants, and that meets, satisfy, or exceeds, their
Yeah.
requirements.
I think that's a really neat perspective on the realities of the actual building now are more complex, and you have to take on a lean mindset, or it's just too complicated. So, um, and that maybe leads us into talking about, the value and waste and keeping flow going, and how the production system actually helps with that in this new, more complex environment that you've laid out.
Yeah, well, the sort of the traditional view is about uh, decomposing and deconflicting, right? So
Mm.
work breakdown structure, those idea, right? So we take something, we break it into pieces, we decompose it, and we remove conflicts between pieces. And that works to some extent. If you're trying to explain a static set of drawings, or something that's static, you can see how this decomposition and deconflicting works. So sure, it might be helpful to build an estimates of all the bits and pieces that's in a building. But to me, production is about, well, how do all these pieces reassemble in a dynamic environment, right? And when they reassemble, how do we make sure that they're effective? That's back to this value and waste, right? So there's it's easy to reassemble pieces in the wrong order, or to reassemble pieces in a way that each other impedes the work of the next person downstream, specifically because it's different organization performing the work. So we don't have a aligned commercial incentive to start with. Everybody is pursuing their own financial interest, and so that paired with a lack of coordination, if I can say, makes it difficult to truly be effective. And if you think of what manufacturing companies do, forget that they build 1 million widgets, because that's usually the argument for us not doing what they're doing. Is that, well, we do one off, right? Go count how many pieces of rebar are on the project, or go count how many bricks are on the project. There's not just one, right? There's thousands of those things. And so we do have some repeatability in our business. So to me, that's what this is about. And there's things that are never displayed on our schedule, right? In traditional schedule, we display, the way I like to think about it is, we display when trades are going to be on site, or when trades should be on site, to start using language of the last mile system, and how they're sequenced with other trades presence, on site. We don't really get into the nitty gritty of how is everybody's work, interconnect. So things like, what is the capacity of every one of the subs? How are we going to manage logistics on site? Where are we going to store drywall? Where are we going to store ductwork that's coming in? How are we bringing the material from the gate to the final point of use, or final point of install, right? So things needs to move in a specific step. And as material moves on site, it will inevitably get in and around other people who are performing work. So if you think about, when I go back to my work in laying out factories, we just didn't, buy robotic equipment and stamping press and machine and lay them willy-nilly in the plant and say, well, I think that sounds like a great place to that sounds like a great place to put this press, and that sounds like a great place to put the parts, right? The factory layout, and how we move workers, and how we move raw material, and how we move semi-finished or finished goods. Semi-finished here ties with the whole conversation around prefab and industrialized construction. So how does that move? To me, that's part of production system design, and it's a conversation that it's not in our schedule. It doesn't happen up front, because we have to have the people who are going to perform the work onboarded to have a meaningful conversation around how this is going to be structured. So to me, that's a valuable conversation. And if you look, there was a study from Stanford. I don't have the paper with me, so I can try to dig it out. But it shows that I think the time on tools, so the time that workers actually spend into installing product on the building, is about 30 or 35% of their time. 65 to 70% of their time is into transition, moving things around, getting their area prep, knowing where to go, going down to fetch the parts that they need, right? So there's productivity there, and it's productivity that is much easier to tap into than trying to make the bricklayer lay 5% more bricks, or the drywaller, lay 5% more sheets of drywall in a day, right? So because in one case you put pressure on the workers, and the other place you can design productivity in the system.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then, that's all part of the lean mindset. And I think I've seen, minimizing waste is easier than maximizing value. Could you talk a little bit about examples of where you've seen that a certain approach has maximized value? But maybe it's productivity, maybe it's something else. Like just so in your experience where you've tried
Yeah.
something and it's like, oh wow, this is so great.
Well, cost doesn't exist to be measured. Costs exist to be reduced, right? Um, and by understanding where you spend money and where you can save money, we can pay for things that,
Mm.
if you ask people today, they'd say it's outrageous, right? So, I give you an example. Like if you can figure out a way to improve labor productivity by 5%, whatever the number is, there's money coming out of this, right? So how about we pay for nicer washroom facilities for workers, right? People keep complaining that we're not an attractive industry. You have this labor shortage. People don't want to, come and work here. I don't think that sending people to the, outhouse that's made out of plastic at minus 30 Celsius, that's about minus 40 Fahrenheit for those who are calling in the States, I think, in the dead of winter, I think if you have an alternative options in life for doing work, you might want to pick this alternative option. Now, to come out and say, well, we can't afford this. You can't
Not
afford this in the current
maximizing
model,
a
but
certain value. Yeah, got
right?
it.
If you can find a way to increase productivity, generate savings, you can. This is bringing value for workers. If you have better facility for workers and you have a more stable workforce coming, if you have a more stable workforce because you treat your people properly, guess what happens? People build buildings. Last I know, it was still people on site, right? And so if people come on site, better morale, better productivity, better outcome. So, this is an example of, of how you can do this. In construction, in the design phase, I mean, there's all kinds of, are we truly understanding the owner's requirement? Are we designing a building that is constructible?
Yeah,
Right.
and livable, I suppose,
Yeah. So I'll give you another little example. I always say this example, and people are sort of surprised by what I say. So, and I'll take a big stance here. Some people might throw tomatoes at me. I don't think that 100% set of drawings has ever been produced.
Mhm.
Right. And I think the best drawing set that is ever given to a construction site is, no research to back it up here, so please, forgive me if my percentage is different than yours, but at 70 to 75% at best. So there's a portion of the design that needs to be finished. Now people look at me funny and say, well, why that? It can't be. Well, what is your definition of 100% design? A definition of 100% design is all the bits and pieces that you're going to put in the building, how they're going to be put together, right? And how it's going to fit. And so the reason we can get there is because we have all kinds of great procurement rules, right? So public procurement, right? So we have trade agreement, Canada EU agreement, Canada Free Trade Agreement, or the new West Pacific Trade Agreement. So there's rules that we can't discriminate against qualified vendors. So we're not getting materials specified when we receive a drawing set, right? That's why we have this entire shop drawing process after award. Now, this entire shop drawing process is now that you've gone through procurement, now that you've hired these performers, they will give you shop drawings, instruction, cut sheets, material that you need to have approved by the design team so you can build the facility. That is in itself a design completion process. The mere fact that this exists is the proof that you do not. I don't think that when Boeing sends an aircraft to a set of drawings to their factory, maybe it's a bad example because they had things flying off, but they don't say, well, send me your shop drawing for the type of glues and the type of screws and the type of seats and the type of engine, and all of that is specified, right? Then it's specified to the latest nut and bolt. They have a 100% or near 100% design. Same thing with any other factories, right? I've never worked in a place where the factory doesn't really know what to build and needs to go and negotiate with the engineering group about what product they're going to install, right? So that isn't set as well. The other example that I like to say is, I've seen this in many projects, anybody on the call, just go open your model and start looking at, discovered that a few years ago, a superintendent discovered this for me. Mechanical models do not put slopes and sanitary lines. Every sanitary system in any building, well, any might be a big claim, but the majority, or almost everyone I looked at, do not have slopes. So you got all your sanitary line and ceilings that are modeled flat. Your 2D drawing says it needs a 2% or 1.41 2% slope, where everything is modeled flat. So a clash-free design model means nothing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting example,
right?
Actually.
Right, and so we we receive these drawings that are incomplete. We have to create a process to finalize product selection, make sure that nothing sort of interfere with one another. There's some issues with the slope. Anybody who's ever had to drop a ceiling, just go back to your drawing and look to see if you had a lot of pipes up there. And
yeah,
pretty much guarantee you'll have it, right? But all of that, like, you can't do production until you're ready, right? Until you have gone through all of the processing. You got approval for your shop drawing, you've got coordination with other trades. So that preparation work to me is part of production management. And it's getting ready to understand what are all the detailed steps, what are all the parts and the pieces that needs to be installed in those detailed steps. Have we got all of this ready? And if it's ready, if it's not ready, what are we doing about it? Another example, like when I was, one last little story. When I was working in manufacturing environment, we would decide what we release into production, a week or 2 weeks before it was set to be released. And we would always avoid to release orders that we knew weren't ready, because the last thing that you want to do is to clog your production system with work in progress that you cannot finish and that you cannot finish, right?
Yeah.
Because when you clog the system, the throughput of the system's output reduces. So we want to get to a place where what we release to be done is ready, right? And that ties to things like the last planner system and look ahead / make ready planning function, which to me that's the engine of the system.
Yeah, speaking of those engines, I mean, we hear, the terms pull planning, last planner system, takt time, and then, there's software that, it is focused on some of those systems. Like, what are the questions that teams should be asking when they're evaluating software, adopting tech, whether it's one of those systems or all of them? What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, you need a. Well, to me, the last mile system is a system. So what's a system is a combination of multiple elements, whether they're process, tools, or methods. So the last mile system has got a combination of methods, and there are other methods, right? So pull planning is a method. It's a method of
Yeah.
planning, right? So to me, I use pull. So to me, pull planning is best suited to answer this question. Where do we eventually want to get to? Right. So if you know your milestones, your milestone is clear. You have a clear, defined objective. We want to be done with our concrete structure before winter, right? So it's a clear milestone. You know what the structure is. You have a timeline. You can define the condition of satisfaction. You know the objective. So where do we eventually want to get to? And the road to get there is clear. What you got to do is optimize coordination. Figure out where you got issues and try to find out is there a better way to get there, right? So the pull method is best for this. The look ahead method. So we'll not start at the end and work back. We start from today and look forward. Is better at answering this question. Where can we go next? And where can we go next? It happens, right? You're into project where you have lots of constraints. There's things that are unknown, and the design phase is a good example, right? We have a decision on this. This has been clarified. We know where we're going here. So there's things that you know where you can go, and there's things where you're sort of stuck, right? So planning forward is better. Where can you go next? Line and takt is to how do we align everybody into some sort of consistent production rates, and can we design a this is the beauty of takt, is you can then design your a system of logistics to start moving material through, because you have a regular step cadence, right? You fix your areas so you know what you put in that area, and you fix your time frame, so that gives you a time cadence and a space breakdown, right? Space time, and with these two variable fixed, you can start to design the production system. We're talking about like the logistics. How do we bring material? Where are we going to store it? How do we not impede one another? And it's easier for trades to manage. So this is better when you have there's research now that says, well, you can apply takt everywhere, or it's easier to apply when you have repeat areas, because you're leveraging consistency. It's a bit harder when you have non-standard areas. It's doable, but it's a bit harder. So all these methods have their best areas of application, but to me, the system is a system. In the last mile system, there's a learning piece, right? What did we learn this week, and how do we apply those lessons learned next week, right? So let's not wait until the end of the project to do lessons learned and put that in a shelf somewhere.
Yeah.
For the next team to maybe tap into this 3 years from now and say, oh yeah, we did this job 3 years ago. We got to have some lesson learned somewhere, and people read through this document and say, I have no context. So how am I going to apply this here? Some you can apply, some you can't. So we want teams to learn lessons and apply their lessons on this job with the same group of people, right? Because they learn things together. So there's a learning piece in the last mile system that is not in these methods. There's a weekly work planning piece that is not in these methods. There's the make ready portions are all about coordination, information, material flow, that is not in these other methods. Right. So there's a bit of a selection that needs to happen based on the type of work that you got, based on the type of issues that you're facing and the type of work that you're delivering.
Yeah, there's definitely a, the lean culture aspect comes out, that it is a culture, it is a way. It isn't just, like you say, a retro at the end of the project that everybody goes, yeah, and moves on, right? It's that continuous improvement.
Yeah, what's about, to me, lean is about, I hate the term, by the way. I think it's it's the wrong name for what it is. It was popularized in 1889, so we're stuck with it now. So because it triggers thoughts and a model. Like if I tell you what's a pizza, you know what a pizza is. You can picture it, right? If I tell you, what's what a small Mercedes convertible is, you have a model in your head. You can visualize it. You know what that is. If I tell you, what's the best hockey team that ever existed, like you have a model. Right? It's easy to see. But when I say lean to people, and I say lean to 50 people ahead of me, they each gonna have a different model in their
Yeah,
head.
people sort of get a glazed look a little bit. I'm just
Yeah,
looking at our time,
yeah,
Dominic, and I do want to touch on something that I've come to understand recently, and that is your journey, continuing on pursuing research in this area and pursuing a PhD. And I wouldn't mind you saying a little bit about what your goals are, if you have any, or maybe there's a discovery on, looking at the workforce and collaborative workforce and productive workforce. And I just would mind you saying a little bit about what you're doing. There may be people on the call that would be interested in contributing to what you're thinking. So why don't you say a little bit about where you're going next?
yeah. That's so. I don't know what my objective is. I sort of do. Is to try to stay mentally sane. That's what most people who do the PhD are telling me to. Are you okay? Are you sure? Are you sure? I think I'm sure now. Why I'm doing this? Because it's part of the journey, right? I've done production system design and did this in modular construction, had some good success. I came to commercial construction, tried to deploy the last binary system. Now takt planning is coming in, and there's still things that we don't fully understand in terms of how production should actually be structured for project A versus project B versus project C versus project B. The last binary system, people might, I'm not going to hate me for this, but it's the best thing that you can implement on traditional project for you to get your eyes open into the limitation of what we do traditionally. If you do this, you're going to start to see issues and holes in the way we manage information, and the way we prepare the work, and the way we plan the work, and the way we coordinate the work, and all that. So it's going to open your eyes to problem. But it is not a framework that was designed to design project production system. It will show you that we don't have this idea, and it will help create flow in traditional project. But there's work that could still happen there. And so that's sort of why, I went to go back to school. I went to Congress and to LCI, and I took their class when I started, and I'm like, okay, I get this. And then I did some project, and then, okay, I get this. And then I called the people, in that conversation, with Glenn at some point, because there's things that weren't clear in my head. And so I kept trying to figure out. And then at some point I sort of hit the wall and said, okay, this is not really helping what I want to do. And so then I started to speak to academia. Farouk Hamza came to University of Alberta. IGLC came into Edmonton, and so I started to read the paper from the International Group of Lean Construction, and started to dive into places of research. And then, I remember my first meeting with Farouk, I was explaining some project problems I was having, and he would nod and say, yeah, I know. I said, well, how do you know this? Right? And then he says, well, that's what my thesis is about. I'm like, what? So he pulled it off the shelf and gave it to me, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how come I don't know about this, right? So I kept reading and reading. I've been to a few IGLCs and started talking, met Lowry, met Glenn, met Iris, met everybody. And then there's still some things I'm like, there's areas that are left unexplored. And, or we are, doctoral work is, you need to create new knowledge, right? And so I came to the realization that I was hitting the boundary of what we knew, right? And then you got two options, right? You either say, oh, well, this is the best we can do. I guess we're going to have to wait for some people to figure it out. Or you say, can I figure this out?
I'm going to figure it out. Yeah.
Right? Can I figure this out? And then at first I thought, it's not me. I can't figure it out. And then, after a few conversations, you're like, oh, maybe this is something I want to try to do. So, so it's therapy for me. So, it focuses me on one thing. I stop, chasing squirrels and, complaining about how things don't work. So it's a bit of a therapy experience. Yeah. And so I'm going to study the design of project production system. And the one thing that I'm going to do in my first objective is I want to do interviews. As a survey and semi-formal interviews. I have the luxury of time. I don't need to graduate tomorrow, right? I want to do this properly. I'm late in life. I got a career. I'm settled. So I know what problem I want to solve, and I'm going to take the time it takes to solve it. And so if anybody in the call is interested, I want to not just speak with one organization. I want to go across several organizations, several countries if I can, and I want to conduct these interviews and then see what we can come up with to sort of improve the way that we approach projects as production system.
I have a feeling that we're going to see your name up with those people that you just mentioned. I really look forward to keeping in touch and seeing where you get to. And again, I'm being conscious of the time. Laura, are there any questions or comments that we should unearth here? I haven't looked at the chat or the Q&A section, but let's open it up if people have questions for Dominic.
Just having a look, it looks pretty quiet in the chat so far. I'm just waiting for our Q&A to load if any questions have come in there. I don't actually see anything in the chat. Quiet bunch today. Do ask your questions. Dom's a wealth of knowledge in this space.
Who's going to win tonight?
We should put up the email address, Dom's email address, so people can get in touch with him if they want to contribute to his work.
Yeah, definitely. I do see one kind of fun question in here, which is, what would you name Lean instead? Like, do you have a name that you feel better describes these types of methods and planning? So,
yeah, I don't have a name on top of my head now. But if you go back to the paper, A Craft Chick from 1989, it was in a 2x2 matrix. The successful of lean production, and on the one side it was buffered production and non-buffered production, which I think is interesting. It was used to describe the attribute, one of the attribute of production system. So yeah, I don't know if I would call it give it a name. I don't know if it needs a name. But Toyota builds a system that is quite adaptable, flexible. The IT industry call this agile, right? There's something around how do you design your operating system so it can best serve your customer. I don't think lean is the right word.
Maybe that's going to be part of your research and your discovery, that you will provide a different lens on that word or a different set of
Yeah.
words or perspective. Like I think that's an interesting area. It's a good question.
Yeah, all I know is that every time I say this word, I get people who have done it for a bit, who have seen the light, who get super excited. And I get people who shrug their shoulders, and I get people who roll their eyes, and I get people who start running. So, you know when, you get, such opposite or varied reaction to a term that the term is problematic.
It's
That's
not a
all
pizza. It's not a
it's
pizza.
it's not a pizza.
That's it.
Everybody
That's
knows
right.
like pizza. And by the way, chicken doesn't go on a pizza. It has to be pepperoni. Whomever eats pizza with chicken and white sauce, don't email me. I'm not buying you a chicken pizza. Pizza doesn't go on chicken doesn't go on pizza.
Nice. I actually agree. That's
I'll
good.
I'll go
Hey,
Hawaiian. I'll do pineapple. That's as far as I'm gonna go.
perfect.
I guess if we don't have any questions from the audience, I know, wait, I see one person raising their hand here. I don't know if they have a question, or if you want to type your question into the chat, we can answer it for you. I was just going to say, one of the things we did kind of have in the webinar description that I know we didn't really get super into in today's discussion was just like the role of technology sort of in adopting some of these processes. Like, I know, it can kind of work for you, it can work against you. Like, what's your recommendation to teams? Like, especially if they're kind of new to dipping their toes into like production planning. Like, is it good to jump right into the tools? Is it good to like really put the emphasis on learning the methods? Like, what have you seen most successful in the industry from your perspective?
Yeah, again, not one size fit all. I think there's sort of I'm going to say two phases in a team sort of learning approach. And the first phase is really sort of discovery, and in the discovery process of what I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm PMP certified. What else can I know? I know everything about project management. So the first piece is discovery and unlearning, and the hardest thing to learn is to unlearn. I sort of found. So there's this unlearning or sort of questioning of what is it that we do traditionally that's problematic, that has to take place, and then a sort of an initial learning of, well, what is this that you are talking about? And it's like sort of the dipping your toe in the water, right? So, there's water. Do I want to swim or do I not want to swim? Let me see if how warm the temperature is. And then so if people are not really sure if they want to jump into the water, if I can use this stupid analogy, don't give them scuba gear, or don't give them a jet ski, because they'll say, I'm not even sure if I want to swim yet, right? Or get in there yet. So I think the first piece has to be, how do you provide more value for less cost? So, these things cost nothing. You can stop at Staples and buy these, if you want to just start to show them, how do we engage people into creating a production system that works for your project, and what are the value of doing this? So once you show people that there is value, and then the value exceeds the cost, people are more interested. So they, might want to sort of jump in. Eventually you get to realize that you're producing a lot more information than you traditionally were producing, and that all of this information needs to be processed relatively quickly and needs to be distributed to people, and that this thing becomes a limitation. And this is usually the good place where you say, but you know what? There are fantastic people who have solved this problem for us. And here they are, right? Nialli's a great example. So once people have bought in, once people are seeing that there's benefits, and once people have gotten a taste of it, it's a good time to approach technology. Now they've seen the process, right? They've understood what it can do. They've seen it live with people. Now you're layering technology, right? And that to me lasts, sort of align with one of the things that I had heard that as part of the Toyota production system, which is automate last. And in automate last, the idea is that you don't want to disregard people's tacit knowledge, understanding, participation in the system. You want to lead with that, right? So get people to see value, get people to try the system. They'll soon recognize that there's benefits in technology, and then layer in that technology, and then they'll be racing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I've seen that actually in watching teams move from the paper sticky planning to, the product that we built, which is, I'll just call it digital sticky notes for a simple term. There was actually, oh, thank goodness we've moved on.
Yeah.
That was interesting, the
Yeah.
adoption.
Yeah, but that would have, would they move on if they had not seen the value of the process?
Exactly.
Right?
It
So
was process first. Absolutely.
yeah, so for me,
learning calculus, you can't do it on you got to learn the mechanics on paper before you jump right into using technology to do it for you. You have zero appreciation for
what you got to get exactly. You got to get an appreciation for what the technology helps you solve. And if people don't want to do this, because I don't think it's for everybody either. I think there are teams who will leverage all of this and be very successful, and there's teams that just will not get there, and then that's okay. I'm not in the business of lecturing people on what to do and not what to do. So if people have been successful in traditional way and that's how they want to do projects, then that I'm not going to come in and tell them to change religion, right?
Yeah, if they're on time, on budget, and safe, I mean, what's to argue with, right?
If people don't see that it's a problem in their life, well, they want to change. I mean, a very simple example, like I smoked for many, 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 many years, and I tried to stop smoking for many, many years, and I was a Frenchman, right? So, I never saw this as a problem, right? It was a very good sort of social thing to do. There's nothing better than a smoke and a coffee, I thought, and a beer and a smoke, I thought.
Was that Jetan? Did you smoke Jetan?
No, but so everybody would tell me, stop, this is killing you, it's bad, and you're like, yeah, one day I'll stop, but I know it's pretty good. But one day I had to come to the realization myself that what I was doing was destructive and not good, and impeding on my health and my life. And when I decided to stop, I stopped, right? So, if you're a smoker and you don't want to stop smoking, and somebody shows up to you and says, hey, you should try these patch and you should try this Nicorette gums, what are you going to tell them to do?
I just saw a nice comment in the chat, thanking you, Dominic. I can't read the person that sent it. They're from the UK, though, I believe, MWH Treatment. It sounds like they want to support your thesis. So she's asking if you could share your contact details, so they can comment.
Get you guys connected after. So
get connected. I'm happy to see what's happening on the other side of the pond. Always looking for an excuse to go on this part of the world too. It's not a bad place. It's the worst place to go. I can't.
Oh my!
I don't like driving on the other side of the road, but if I can get there by train and I don't have to drive, I'm
thanks, Sasan, for your comment. I'm glad you could join us today.
Sounds good. And it does look like we did actually get a question into the chat. If we do have time to answer one quick one more
Yeah,
before we wrap up here.
let's do one more, Laura.
Yeah, and this one is just, it kind of leads off to some of the stuff we were talking about like getting people to change. And this individual is asking, like, it's challenging enough to get contractors to change. Designers in particular tend to be pretty stubborn. Do you have any good recommendations of kind of like ways to introduce lean or like teaming exercises to kind of get people more bought into these methods and this way of thinking, just in terms of kind of an introduction? Like we said, it's hard to break existing habits and to change people that don't want to change, but do you have any kind of recommendations or ways to ease them into it?
Yeah, I mean, there's little games and activities, right, that are sort of interesting to do, and people say, yeah, that's cute and that's helpful. That sometimes gets them to be curious, whether it's a Pareto trade or the little block tower game or those sort of things. I find that people, but even telling stories sometimes about, well, this team did this and it should help you. That's them, right? What me, what about me? How do you help me, right? So sometimes I find that you unfortunately you have to wait until people have problems in their delivery and they tried other things and it doesn't work, and then at some point they come in and say, can this help me? And then we have to be able to go into their project, look at their problems, and show them how these ideas can solve not a problem on paper, right? Not a problem in research, or not a problem in the classroom, but like, can you come here and solve a real problem for me? And I find that I find that this seems to be helpful. Or you just you go in and you can don't overpromise and like, this is the best thing since sliced bread and I will change, revolutionize the world, because it's not that straightforward and that easy. It's a lot of work, right? But if you can come in, look at what they have and show them, this is where I think you're going to have problems, and this is how you can go around solving those. This is before sticky notes, right? This is just about thinking in terms of production, and production ideas in the way the project is delivered. So I've got success with that now, in approaching team and saying, I think you're going to have problems here, right? And I'm not judging what you're doing, right? Because construction people are proud people. You can't tell them they're wrong, because they'll chase you away. Nobody likes to be told that they're wrong. We don't really have a culture that supports this sort of thing. So, show me what you're doing. Can I have a look at this? I took your information, I converted it in this way of thinking, and this is what I see. I can't fix it. You're the expert. That's your project. You know way more than I do about all the specific of what you do, but this is what I see here, and and I think you need to look at this, and this. And if it's problem that they did not foresee, and that you're going to help them dodge issues, they'll see that there's value, and then they'll be curious.
Yeah, that's a nice answer.
Sounds good. Well, that does take us to the top of the hour.
Yeah, that sounds good. I have enjoyed your insights, Dominic, and sharing them, and I do see some nice reactions in the chat, appreciating you taking the time to share, and we'll hear more from you.
Always happy. You can reach out. I'm on LinkedIn if anybody wants to, find my name. Don't wear a Canadiens jersey there, but you should be able to find me out, and happy to be here and happy to continue the conversation and try to help make this industry better.
Absolutely.
Construction is not going anywhere, ever. We'll always need shelter, infrastructure, roads, bridges, water delivered to our house, electricity delivered to our house. Let's stop taking this industry for granted, right? It can be significantly improved, and we just got to figure out how to do it. And I think the production science is a way forward.
Yeah, agree, absolutely. And I know you're going to make an amazing contribution. So look forward to that. All right, all.
Really
All
appreciate
right.
it, Tom.
Thank you so much. You have a good rest of your day. Enjoy game 1 tonight.
Right,
Go
Tom.
Habs.
Thanks.
And
Later.
yeah, go Habs, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds
Perfect.
good.
Later.
Thanks, everyone.